another Film Hooligans Behind the Lens. I'm your host, John the host, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Jason Alt.
He keeps trying to get me to change my Twitter handle to Jason the co-host, and it's not happening.
Our guest tonight is no stranger to Hollywood, but he's been on the other side of the camera now, making his directorial debut. It's Academy Award-winning FX artist, Barney Burman. Sir, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Wow, I sound really impressive the way you say it.
We don't know anyone else who's won an Academy Award, so you are 100% of the Academy Award winners we've interviewed. So,
yeah, well, I'll try to represent.
Jason and I were both fortunate enough to have been chosen to review your directorial feature debut, Wild Boar.
Sorry.
No, not at all. Can you take us on the journey of what got you from kind of point A to now to directing your first feature, sir?
Ooh, that's a layered question.
Why would you open with that? You're supposed to do a softball. That's like
maybe like what's your favorite color? I thought it was going to be first or something.
I only had one question. The whole
yeah. There's one question.
It's just one question podcast.
Contacts, something like that. All right, I think I'm ready. Well, I guess in short, and it won't be, I've always been something of a cynist. A couple things. Like I said, it's layered. None of this is diagnosed, but I have been accused by brighter minds than myself, people who are in the know, of being ADHD and dyslexic and all kinds of things. And because maybe of that, I have not, it's been a struggle for me to keep my mouth shut. And I've been on enough sets through my life where I watch the director, I watch how they're making the film, and I see moments and go, ooh, why aren't they doing that? Or I go up to an actor I'm doing the makeup for and say, you know, if you just did this at this point, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes that would work out very well. And sometimes the director would be like, hold on, cut, what are you doing? But the tendency has always been there for me to think I know better. So I got to a point where I thought, you know what, why don't I shut up and sort of put my money and my ambition where my mouth is. And that's what ultimately drove me to this, to try directing. I always thought maybe I could, maybe I should, I want to one day, and the day finally came.
I mean, you wanted to be an actor predominantly at first, right? And then you...
Yeah. Well, first I wanted to be a stuntman.
Oh.
And then I realized stuntmen are only on film for like a moment. And I think I want to be on film more than that. So I studied acting. I started studying acting at 14. And then I continued on and off through the years of studying and pursuing. Probably for about 20 years, while also working in makeup effects shops to make money.
You have a wheelhouse of you're a legendary FX creature creator, but stepping behind the camera and writing and all this, where you're just like, oh shit, you know, maybe this is a little bit tougher than what I thought it was going to be.
You know, I expected that. But I don't think I ever felt it. I loved it. I loved pretty much every stage of it. I really, one of the best times of my life, doing one of the best things I've ever done, was to write this thing with the idea of directing it, to get the opportunity to direct it, and all the layers of that are interesting to me and fun. It's like I'm always terrible in school, and I can't really even stay awake sitting in a classroom for very long. If a doctor tries to explain something to me, like in 5 minutes, I'm just being like, zoning out. But doing this, I don't think there was ever a time when I was bored or tired of it. Doesn't mean I wasn't tired, but I was never tired of it. And figuring out just on paper initially scenes and structure and shots, and then once you're there, trying to figure out how is all that stuff that I did now relevant, and sometimes it wasn't. And then what do I do? And how do I figure it out? And where do we put the camera? And how am I going to tell this story that makes any sense? I just really relished in it. And I had a friend of mine, the guy that played Hunter, Douglas Tate, he came up to me at one point. He goes, "I don't think I've ever seen you happier than you are right now. You seem to be really loving this."
That's awesome.
And I did. I want, it's a thing I feel impassioned to do.
The film itself is like a true throwback to the grindhouse days of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Hills Have Eyes, with the right amount of Planet of the Apes sprinkled in. Most projects,
Thank you.
yeah, I totally. Most projects you have worked on in your career have been a little bit more family friendly, just a little bit, than Cannibal Pig Mutants. Was it liberating to?
Like as a makeup artist, according to my credit list, do you think it's a more of a family friendly credit list?
Yeah, did you
I
check
never really
the
thought
credit
about
list?
it.
I don't know. You did some of my some of my favorite episodes of some of my favorite shows too. Like I think Drive is probably my favorite episode of the X-Files ever.
Oh God, I love that. That experience was wonderful, and working with Bryan Cranston was, nobody knew who Bryan Cranston was at that time, and he was just such a freaking amazing guy, kind, supportive, generous, like off camera, just the stuff. He was just so easy and enjoyable to work with.
I think I mean by like, was it liberating to go as gory and as gross as you wanted to go? Because basically this was your baby and you weren't kind of working on someone else's project with that set of rules. It was all up to you.
Yes. And that's, I figured I could always shoot it as gory as I want to, and then I could cut it back if need be. And there are a few things that I didn't quite get to do or get to show that I don't miss. They don't need to be there. But I remember in the writing of it, like a thought would come into my head, and I would just like, oh God, that's awful. It's horrible. I can't do that. Oh, shoot! Now I have to do that. Like the idea was something. If something came to me that put me off, then I know that I've got to put that in the script, and I've got to shoot that, and that's got to be part of it because that's what people are going to remember. The things that get to me, the things that I actually respect in films as a young person, are the things that hurt me to watch. It kind of repulsed me. It left a mark of some kind. And maybe sometimes a good mark or sometimes a bad mark, but the things that left a mark. And so I thought if there's something comes to me and it marks me in the thought of it, then of course I got to put that in.
What were some of those movie moments, if you could kind of pull some from like the past that really did kind of stick with you, that were disturbing, for better or worse?
Yeah, like the Red Dwarf in Don't Look Now just disturbed me, chilled me to the bone.
Yeah.
The woman in the bathtub in The Shining. I remember watching The Shining. I was like 15, I think. I was alone. I went to see it alone in a theater because I knew a friend of mine ran the projector in the projection booth. And so she got me in for free, and I sat there and watched The Shining, not really knowing what it was for. And that moment, that whole movie was great and terrified me. That moment just chilled me. There's so many other little things that just I remember watching A Clockwork Orange when I was, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 at home by myself, sitting right in front of the TV set, ready to turn it off because my parents were going to be home any minute. I knew it, and I wasn't supposed to be up. And I watched that entire movie, and it just affected me. And if I can move people in that way. On the other hand, things I remember sitting in the theater watching Christopher Reeve in Superman, and having him embrace Lois Lane toward the end, and I'm just thinking, I'm practically crying and thinking, if I can do that, if I can move people that same way, that's one of the things that made me want to act.
I kind of wanted to ask, did you see Dawn of the Dead growing up in theaters?
The original I
Yeah.
did not see in theaters. I saw it years later on VHS, and I wasn't really a fan. I'm not a big fan of horror. I'm not a fan of horror movies per se. I'm not a fan of zombies, but I'm a fan of anything done well.
Yeah. Okay. I could dig that.
In a makeup effects family and seeing makeup and stuff, I was way too critical of things like Dawn of the Dead, or I remember even E.T. I thought was terrible.
Wow.
Because it just I didn't look at that and believe it. So
you got the chance to upstage Tom Savini, right, when you worked on Dawn of the Dead 2004?
Yeah, I didn't really think of it in those terms, but I did really enjoy. I was Dave Anderson hired me and Tony G to sort of department head the zombies, and at first I thought, do I want to go to Toronto and make zombies for 2 months? I don't know, but it was really one of the funnest times I had, and figuring out how can we make this zombie different turned out to be a really fun job.
Watching Wild Boar now, there's a scene where one of the creatures kind of pokes his head into the cage, so to speak, really close, and it really evoked the feeling of the Xenomorph and Ripley. Was that were those kind of like full cast creatures a big part of your inspiration as well, like growing up?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Alien 3 wasn't the greatest film, but had great moments. And David Fincher is just one of my favorite filmmakers. But I also don't make films the way he does. But you're always, as a filmmaker, you got to beg and borrow and steal from the stuff that you've seen before that worked well. I knew that was a very obvious kind of moment that kind of sort of reflected back to Alien 3. So I'm going to call it an homage instead of a outright theft. But it worked in the story, and I would not have used anything that was such a kind of an obvious parallel had it not been something that worked for for the scene.
Hearing you say you're not like a fan of horror per se, I feel like Wild Boar makes even a little more sense to me, because we talked about the movie like right before this interview, and I was remarking to John that it seemed like you were sort of doing a nod to a lot of like the Hills Have Eyes type films, but like the characters were almost armed by having seen those movies, so they didn't make obvious mistakes. So I kind of thought, there's a reverence for that source material here. But like hearing you say that, like, it's less an homage and more sort of like, well, it wouldn't happen exactly like this unless everyone was a complete idiot. I really dig that about Wild Boar. Like some of the dialogue reflected like, no, why would anybody do that? And some of the choices the characters made, it kind of feels like you're not relying on dramatic irony and characters making bad decisions for like the horror. It's more like actual survival would still be tough under these circumstances. And why have the audience yelling at the screen when you can just show something genuinely terrifying? These people would be overmatched in any case.
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
I'm really glad to hear you say that. Like, no, this wasn't me trying to revere these movies as much as like critique them and make something a little more realistic. I really got a sense of that.
Well, good. Thank you. I'm not going for horror tropes. I'm not going for a lot of sort of red herrings. I always hated that when like someone gets startled and the cat jumps up and goes, Cats don't jump up and go rare. It's a cheap trick. it works. If that's you want to do it, that's great. But it's not what I want to do. And I always try to think what feels right and real, and not what's just purely manipulative.
Yeah, I think you nailed that down. That I think we spent most of the review talking about the decision making that these characters made, where something as simple as one of the characters in the dark cave simply said, "Everyone, turn off your phone lights so our eyes can adjust to where the natural light sets in the cave."
Yeah.
That tickled me. I was like, "Wow, this
Oh,
is
nice.
so much smarter than any other like run of the mill grindhouse film."
Oh, well, thank you for that. I like that moment. I think that's just, yeah, that's all. Just thank you.
I think it's that moment is indicative of like a larger theme in the film, which is not relying on like
what you know in a horror movie.
Well, yeah, and but not relying on people making uncharacteristically bad decisions. Like if your monster can't catch the people without them tripping over a tree root every 15 feet, then like how scary is the monster really?
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and don't show don't show the rubber shark unless the rubber shark looks like a fully articulated like mutant pig. Like these creatures, I mean, of course they're coming from you in your studio. They look incredible, although I'm sure you were the creator of these creatures, but you're not credited as like the makeup and effects artist on this. Was it super hard to kind of step back and be like, I'm the director and I have people to do this part that I usually do for me?
Well, I was the main designer of those characters. And, I had some other designers. Jared Morantz did some early design work for me, which is seen on some of the posters. He's a beautiful artist. And I had some other people sculpting, but the main characters I did come in and I sculpted, and I had a vision of what they should be. So, but once it came to shooting, Nick Reisinger, who was working for me at the time, who was like the hardest working man ever, he wore many hats on that. He said he wanted to, lead the makeup department and do the makeup effects. And I said, great. And the very first day, he and Tanner White, they were both making up the hunter, Douglas Tate. And I walked into the room and I saw what they were doing. And as is my nature and my impulse to go, no, you should do it this way. Let me show you. And I started to feel that. And I started to move in to do that. And I said, uh-oh, if I do this, I'm crossing into another realm that I don't want to be in. If I do this, I can't do everything else. So I said, guys, you're doing great. Keep it up. And I stepped back and I walked out. And they did a bang up job. They didn't need me. And I was able to free myself up from worrying about it. It was really great.
Yeah, I mean, because not only were you directing and everything, but you also were featured actor in this as well, which, I mean, you're one of my favorite characters in the film.
Yay, thank you.
Yeah. And I also assume that you don't have to worry too much when you're working on other movie projects doing effects makeup, that you have to worry about the back end of the film industry. Like I think we talked about this before on another interview where I think in film school it should be taught how to not only, what happens when you do make a film, how do you distribute it, how do you get the word out about that. How have you been dealing with the challenges of the distribution of the film and just like getting now that you've made a movie and figured out or navigated some of the challenges to get this get eyeballs on this thing now?
Well, if I go back a moment and just say I never planned on being in the movie. Actually, I wrote the part thinking I could call on one of my friends who is an actor who has a little more name or at least face recognition to do that part. And then I figured, well, I had a guy who was lined up to do it, and I was a similar build. So I figured if I could double him, in most of this. I only have to bring him in for a day or two. But then while we're doing all the tech rehearsals, I thought, God, it'd just be so much easier if I play it. And the my producing partner and the DP were like, yeah, that'd be a lot better. So I just decided to. And it was fun. And as far as distribution, the thing with this movie is, I think I mentioned earlier, is that I couldn't hurry it up and I couldn't stop it. So everything had to kind of happen in its time. The way the movie actually got going was just like the universe sort of conspiring to put me in the place to be able to do it. So the distribution came up a few months ago. So, a friend of mine said, "Hey, I know somebody who's distributed with this guy. He's interested, and I can vouch for him. I like what he's doing with my film. And will you talk to him?" So I said, sure. And it turned out to be Jeremy and Vangelis. And he's been amazing. He's been great. So if I just trust that everything happens in regards to this film, at least when it's supposed to, everything goes very smoothly.
How hard is it to be patient about those type of things? Being involved
really
in
hard sometimes.
Yeah.
Really hard sometimes, because the idea of being a director is you're controlling. Mm-hmm. You're probably a bit of a control freak and/or a micromanager, and it's really hard to also at the same time know that you have no ultimate control, and sort of, if I get a little 12-steppy maybe, is releasing it to a higher power and say, this will happen. I just have to trust it and not fight it. So when I can do that, things happen nicely. If I try to fight it and try to argue it, what it reminds me of is that when my brother and I were younger, we were in China working on a film with Donald Sutherland called Bethune, The Making of a Hero. And we were both in the mountains in China, and we were skipping rocks in the stream. My brother was skipping rocks downstream, and he was doing pretty consistently very well skipping these rocks. And for some reason, I decided to skip rocks upstream. Well, what happens when you skip rocks upstream is it just hits the reverse energy of the water and just goes boom. And I just kept going and going and going and not being able to do it. And then finally one just hit just right. And it hit and it hit and it hit. It went up and it landed on a rock. I just went thunk and just stood there. And I thought, wow, that's so gratifying. I'm fighting it. I'm doing the opposite of what I should be doing, but it pays off when it's time to. And that's just kind of how I live my life, I think. I seem to fight the current, and then until finally it all kind of jives in the right moment and pays off. And if I trust that that's going to happen, I'm good.
So do you feel like you were at sort of the mercy of fate with this movie because of
well, not I wouldn't say the mercy of, but yes, I felt actually supported by fate.
Okay.
I felt like I had written this and I started to push it into production, and I started to build sets and didn't know where I was going to get all this set dressing from, because all what I needed was just a bunch of garbage. Where am I going to get a bunch of garbage? Sounds easy, but exactly
you live in LA,
where does that
Barney.
come from?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but exactly where does that come from? I didn't know, and at the same time, I was dealing with this crazy Russian florist hoarder that was living in my house that I rented out, and just outside of LA. And he stopped paying me rent, and I had to evict him. And I literally had to get the sheriff to come and kick him out and all that stuff. And he left behind, because he's a hoarder, piles and piles of junk. Right at the time when I needed piles and piles of junk. And I was like, there's my set dressing. It all came from the crazy Russian florist.
You called him back. You're like, you could stay. That's all the rent I needed.
No, he's one of the worst people I ever met. But in a weird way, the universe did me a favor, lining me up with this deadbeat.
You know, I had a question in the hopper about just like taking me through the emotion of winning that Oscar and all that, but then I actually stumbled upon an interview that you already did, and just the way you described it, I actually got a little moved by it because
Oh,
it was just like you explained it in a way where it was just like a perfect feeling. It was just a great feeling. And the fact that you just didn't want Ben Stiller to stop talking on stage,
yes.
where you're just like,
Yes.
as soon as he stops talking one way or another, this is over and I'm just having a great day right now and a great moment.
Yeah.
That
It
was
was
like
flawless. My day up to that point was without a glitch or a problem or anything. And I just thought, if I could live in this moment, that's the most present I think I've ever been in my life.
Yeah. I love how you said right after, you're just like, yeah, it's a good feeling. Everyone should try to do it.
Absolutely. You know what? It's what people don't quite believe. My belief is people don't believe it's achievable. And it is. People win Oscars every year. And most of the time, it's not the same people winning over and over. Most of the time, it's new people winning something. And it's something, I'm not saying aspire to win an Oscar per se, but just know that you can. If that's what you want, you can do it. When I went into doing Star Trek, I didn't have any preconceived notions about winning an Oscar. I just thought I want the work that we do in this to be worthy of that. I want to be that good that it's worthy of it. I didn't think they're going to get an Oscar to Star Trek. Are you kidding me?
Right.
You know, every now and then they'd nominate it for something, but it always seemed kind of like, it was good, but, you know, we're not going to, it's science fiction. We're not going to really. And then for some reason, I didn't see it as a reality at the time, but I just wanted it to be worthy of it. So once it became even nominated, I thought, wow, we've done it. We hit that mark. We're worthy because my peers have said so.
So when people say it's an honor just to be nominated, they actually mean it?
Absolutely. It's kind of a bigger honor because it's your peers saying you did good work. Then when it goes into whether or not it's going to win or not, that goes to the Academy as a whole. Well, it's more of a popularity contest. If that year we had been up against Lord of the Rings, it might have been a different outcome.
Sure.
You know, or like anything Rick Baker's done, it might have been a different outcome. But it was the right time. It was the right year. The right hand was dealt, and people responded well to it.
But that being said, I could tell you're just so appreciative and humble about the entire filmmaking process because you have your Academy Award right behind you, displayed next to film festival awards.
Oh yes. I nearly forgot it was back there.
Yeah, sure you did.
This is my new interview spot for things. So
Perfect.
I look professional and valid, I guess. See, I have glistening things behind me. That makes me a real person.
Yeah, I mean, do you still get a little bit of that, like, same... I mean, obviously you're not at the Academy Awards, but, like, whenever you're at a film festival, especially debuting your first feature and you hear your name for an award, you still get that little bit of fix like you did before.
It's the best. It's the best. We got one of these guys up here is from Studio City Film Festival. I had no idea we were going to get any kind of awards there, but he got Best Picture, Best Cinematography, Best Actress, and it was just such a wonderful, glowy, kind of fun evening. But it just totally caught me off guard. I just really didn't expect it. I don't know. I'm really thrilled people are enjoying this movie. I'm tickled because you know what? it makes me laugh. I watch it and I enjoy it. It's fun for me. So if other people are also having fun watching it, that makes me really happy.
I mean, coming from such a pedigree of a family that you did, coming from the filmmaking industry, especially in effects makeup, was it how validating it was to get an award so prestigious? Was it just like, I'm in here now?
Yes. Well, it certainly felt validating at the time. It certainly felt like I did it. I've achieved a level. And, a friend of mine was talking about this recently, who is an extremely talented makeup artist. And I mentioned something about my own insecurities or something. And he was like, what, you got an Oscar, you got this, you got everything. I said, the problem is, though, no matter what they give you, no matter what awards they dote upon you, you're still you. You're still going to carry around the demons that you have. And, on any given day, those demons might be a lot louder in your ear than on other days. The winning an Oscar was like really one of the best days of my life. It was such a perfect day, and what a wonderful, wonderful experience. But it didn't make me a better me. It didn't. I don't think it. Like there are people who were my friends and loved me before that, and they were my friends and loved me after. There were people who didn't love me or didn't respect me before that, and didn't make them respect me anymore. It was just a really wonderful experience, and I don't want to give it any more sort of gravity than that. So, there have been plenty of things since in the last 10 years. What was it? 10 years ago, I won that. In the past 10 years, that have reminded me I'm still just a human making my way through a career and a life. So, I'd say enjoy those things and don't make them everything.
Something else that maybe a lot of people don't know, I like this story about J.J. Abrams and your relationship with him, and how I think it was the last day of shooting Star Trek, he showed you a response letter that your father wrote, a response letter to J.J. Abrams from your father, because Abrams was an aspiring effects makeup artist.
That's right.
How wild was that? Just the whole full circle deal.
I mean, were it not for that letter, and my father was a very kind man, and is very encouraging of young artists. He was always great with that, with embracing the people who looked up to him, and who wanted advice, and he was always great. Now, had he not had that correspondence with J.J. Abrams, I may never have gotten the show. I may never have gotten even put up for an Oscar. I don't know. That it all kind of tied together. But at that time, on the last day of shooting, he showed me that letter, and Star Trek was a very, very hard show, and I was really, really exhausted. And he showed me that, and I couldn't process it. I wanted to burst into tears. I just had to get off set as fast as I could. But it was a really touching moment. I think the fact that he saved it all these years and it was in pristine shape, it says a lot for who he is. There's a lot of character in that.
Now, having directed a couple short films and now a feature, what's on the docket next? Is it, now that you ripped off the Band-Aid, are you itching to helm another feature as fast as possible? Or are you happy going back well, not even going back, because you're constantly doing the makeup effects also. You're always working.
Yeah, my goal now is to just get on doing straight makeup on a soap opera. I think that would be really
Just a steady gig.
Yeah, just a steady gig. Um, there's nothing wrong with that either. I could use the hours and the insurance.
Sure, yeah.
Sure, yeah.
It's part of skipping rocks upstream. It's just nothing is steady and easy for me. But yeah, I have written a few scripts, and I would love to get back into the director's seat and get to making something very soon. This COVID thing has kind of put a damper on that, but hopefully we'll get through this and something's waiting on the other side for it.
Are you planning to stick within the genre of like a horror film, or did you have something else in mind?
Well, again, I'm not a genre fan per se. I'm not any kind of genre. I've written a lot of scripts over the years. I started writing in '91, I think, and Wild Boar was the first time I got something script-wise produced. So I have comedies, I have fantasies. I even wrote a superhero script, making up all my own superheroes. I have something I worked on recently with a friend of mine that is kind of like old Hollywood that just tickles me pink. It's just so much fun. And it's kind of a semi-raunchy comedy. My mother passed away a year ago today, actually. And earlier this year, I wrote a script about her life, about the last, maybe representing probably the last 20 years of her life, and sort of a secret love that she had with a very popular science fiction villain that I had no idea about until she died, and found love letters and all this stuff. And it's like, holy crap, I have no idea about all this. So that was one of the hardest things I ever had to write emotionally, but it was one of the easiest, most flowing stories that ever came out of me.
Totally.
So I've got a lot of different ideas and genres, and it's not, I'm nothing against doing another horror film, but I don't want to be stuck in any one thing.
Sure.
Yeah, like looking back on the career so far, do you enjoy more of the, like, I know that you thought very fondly of working on Grimm, because that was like a steady thing which kept your creative juices flowing constantly. You were constantly doing creatures and dead things, right?
Monsters and dead people.
Yeah. Are you more interested on kind of catching on to that? Are you more interested in creating your own films, or maybe even signing on to another blockbuster? Like, what would be the ultimate goal if you could wave the magic wand, so to speak?
Well, magic wand would be making my own projects, shooting my own projects. I have a TV series idea that would be wonderful. That's kind of about the people who want to make monsters and dead people. I have so many projects that I would love to see come to fruition. And that's emotionally, that's really where my heart is. That said, just about anything that challenges me artistically is something I'm in for. Whether it's a feature film or a TV show. Grimm, God, the creatures that I got to make for Grimm over 6 years, which most people would never even probably think about making them. They just hit me almost, weekly with something I never would have thought about making it. I loved it. Great group of people, also. And that's another big part of it, is I really just want to work with really good people that I enjoy going to work and being with. If it's a big film and it's loaded with people I don't enjoy, I don't have any interest in it. Life's too short to surround myself with people I have to fight to do well with.
It's funny. If I never would have imagined you would have done as much comedy as you would have, but like looking at your IMDb, like you did a lot of comedy stuff too, like Tropic Thunder, Borat, Jackass. Like I think it's really interesting. Like VFX and that kind of stuff. It doesn't all have to be horror because like
Absolutely.
a lot of movies need prosthetics. A lot of movies need disguises and stuff like that. I just think it's really interesting, kind of the breadth of different films you've worked on.
Yeah, and comedy is just a huge part of me. It's part of who I am. Comedy is in my soul. I grew up. I thought my father was hysterical, made me laugh all the time. So I wanted to be funny as well, and so I, just growing up trying to make people laugh, which is funny because I think I have the same sense of humor now that I did when I was younger, but now it's considered dad jokes.
Yeah, we're right there
with
with you.
Beard,
Yeah.
And now whatever you say is a dad joke.
Yeah. I guess my last real question is, with so much time, like almost a lifetime spent in the industry, literally from birth till now, what sage-like advice can you, from the other side, give to an aspiring filmmaker, writer, artist, or just a creative in general?
There's a lot of good advice to give, and it's hard to narrow advice down to a thing. Like that thing is the key to it all. So I would say listen to everybody who gives you advice. Pick and choose the ones that you like. It seems like with globalization of things, I used to say this even before the internet and before things got so globalized, but I would say live where you want to live and do what you want to do. And let the rest work itself out.
I heard that earlier. Jeez.
Yeah, right.
That's it. I'm moving back.
Yeah, I mean, I heard you mention that your career has been made up of a burst of breakthroughs, and I could wholeheartedly say that having someone of your caliber and your experience on this show, sharing your experience and your knowledge with us, is one of those breakthroughs for the Film Hooligans. So I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much, Barney Burman, for coming on the show. Go check out Wild Boar. It is so much fun, and it's a bit smarter than you would think from your typical grindhouse fare. So any last second plugs that you'd like to shout out, Barney?
I'm working on speaking of working with really good people. I did season 1 of a show called The Substitute on Nickelodeon, and we're doing season 2 right now, and it just really warms my heart because they do these practical jokes. We disguise celebrities. They teach kids. Kids don't know who they are. Then at the end of it, they reveal who they really are, and the kids are wowed. And then it's usually some kind of like kids organization or something, and they give them like $25,000 to this organization. Just melts me every time they do it. So I would say just for a really good time to watch something that's fun and a very worthy cause, check out The Substitute.
So it's like a wholesome prank show.
It's a very wholesome prank show. That's exactly what it is. And then, watch out for whatever my next thing is and go see Wild Boar. If you could, please give us a rating on IMDb. That is extremely helpful. Give us a rating on Amazon. That's extremely helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll do.
Will do. Yeah, anything that we could do to spread the word, because this film's great, and cannot wait to see what you come up with next. And I know Jason and I both have kids of that age that we will be checking out The Substitute also. So,
good.
Yeah, if you like this very show, go ahead and share it around. Tell everyone that we're talking about films and the filmmaking process with the filmmakers themselves. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will be posting this on all your favorite podcasting sites as well as the video. So all your iTunes and Spotify's, leave us ratings on there as well. You could find this very show on Twitter at film_hooligans. You could find me personally at John the Host. Jason, where can everyone find you, sir?
I am at Jason E. Alt on the Twitter, and I've got a pin post at the top of my profile that talks about all the other projects I work on.
For Jason Alt and for our special guest tonight, Barney Burman, I'm John Dunning. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.